You know, guys, we often talk about how the political rhetoric in this country is just getting absolutely out of control. We've also talked about how demonizing and dehumanizing groups of people can have catastrophic consequences for those who are targeted. And we've also talked about how things might get worse before they get better with Donald Trump as our president and this rabid MAGA movement becoming so pervasive in our society. And unfortunately, over the weekend, that's exactly what happened. Things got much, much worse as multiple Democratic lawmakers in Minnesota were targeted for political assassination. And I'm not saying that there is a direct line to be drawn between somebody like Donald Trump and the suspect in this case. But what I am saying is that when you have a movement in this country that has elevated the political rhetoric so high, has demonized people on the left so much, these are the types of things that one might expect from those very actions. So let's go ahead and take a look at who was affected, who was targeted in this politically motivated attack. And then I want to take a look at the timeline of events. And I also want to look at who the suspect in this case actually is. If you guys do appreciate my work, please do remember to subscribe.
One Minnesota lawmaker and her spouse were fatally shot. A second Minnesota lawmaker and his spouse were injured in separate targeted shootings at their home in eastern Minnesota, very close to Minneapolis. The governor, Tim Walz, said moments ago that State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark, were shot and killed, while State Senator Mark Hoffman and his wife, Yvette, survived.
My good friend and colleague, Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark, were shot and killed early this morning in what appears to be a politically motivated assassination. Minnesota's thoughts and prayers are with her family, her loved ones, her children, and her parents. My prayers also go out to State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette, who were each shot multiple times. The Hoffmans are out of surgery at this time and receiving care, and we are cautiously optimistic they will survive this assassination attempt.
I mean, this is just absolutely devastating. You have a Democratic lawmaker, Melissa Hortman. Her and her husband were shot multiple times and killed. Then you've got Mark Hoffman. I think Tim Walz just said John Hoffman. I'm not exactly sure. I'm pretty sure it's Mark Hoffman and his wife. They survived multiple gunshot wounds, and luckily they pulled through surgery, and hopefully they will make a full recovery. But this is not how we should be dealing with political disagreements in this country. And it was very clear right away that this was a politically motivated attack. And you've got lunatics in the right wing who are trying to spin up stories and all this disinformation and all these conspiracies that somehow this guy was on the left and he was targeting Democrats because they were too moderate. It is such an indictment of where our country is right now. Instead of mourning the loss of lives who were just taken from us, we have people trying to score political points. It is disgusting. And I know we've all thought this way. I've thought this way too, and I don't like myself for it. But as soon as I heard that this was a politically motivated attack, I was crossing my fingers that it wasn't somebody on the left. And that's the kind of environment that we are living in today in the United States of America. It is shameful that this is where we are at. That both sides of the aisle think so poorly of one another. That Donald Trump casts all Democrats and people on the left as crazy lunatics who are trying to destroy this country. And now we've got a politically motivated attack in Minnesota that has killed people and gravely injured others. I want to show you a quick timeline of the events because what actually happened is the police were proactive in going and checking on other politicians that lived in the area, and it turns out that they stopped the assassination attempt of a third politician. That is not covered in this video, but I kind of want to give you a timeline of the events here.
Saturday morning when a 911 call was made in Champlain. Police responded to Senator John Hoffman's home and found he and his wife Yvette had been shot. Both were rushed to the hospital and underwent surgery. Then, about an hour and a half later, Brooklyn Park Police proactively went to check on Representative Melissa Hortman's home. There, they found a man dressed as an officer with a fake police vehicle. The suspect shot at officers and ran away. By 5:30 a.m., a shelter-in-place alert was sent out by Brooklyn Park Police telling anyone within a 3-mile radius of the Edinburgh Golf Course to stay in their homes. At about 6 o'clock Saturday morning, the suspect stopped by a home near 49th and Fremont in Minneapolis, where residents say he rented a room. Security cameras capturing new images of the suspect dressed in casual clothing with a cowboy hat.
So this guy had a premeditated plan. The car that was found with him had a list of names of potential targets. And I think if the police didn't show up, unfortunately, they didn't show up to Melissa Hortman's house in time. But it turns out that they showed up to a third politician's house and kind of shooed the suspect away without even kind of knowing it. That's something that we found out a little bit down the line, and I kind of prepped this video as the information was rolling in. But I just want to commend the police and their fine police work here. Unfortunately, they didn't make it to Melissa's house in time. That's a tragedy. But I think their proactive steps to check on other important figures in politics in Minnesota, the way that they did, I think it's very possible that they saved some people's lives. I think they should be commended for that. I think that shows good police work and being proactive and trying to stop a crime before it happens. But this is a guy who deliberately targeted these Democratic politicians and just carried out some of the most heinous acts that one could carry out because he had political disagreements with these Democratic lawmakers. And I also want to show you how he was dressed up as a police officer. He was even driving a vehicle that looked like a police vehicle with lights and all. And then he showed up to these houses wearing one of those, as they describe it here, a hyper-realistic Halloween mask. Well, let's go ahead and check this video out.
You can see in the third picture there, he is wearing a police uniform outside one of the victims' homes. Now, they say he showed up impersonating a police officer. You'll notice he's wearing a rubber mask as well in that picture. It appears to be a Halloween mask that looks like an old man that covers up his entire head.
And the only reason I wanted to show this to you is because we currently have ICE agents rolling into neighborhoods around the country. They are dressed in plain clothes. They look probably similar to this guy, minus the realistic Halloween mask. But this is why it is so important that we have police wearing uniforms. This is why it's so important that we have police identifying themselves when people ask for their identification. Because you can have situations like this, if you've got ICE rolling up all around the country in plain clothes, and they don't really look like police officers, they don't really look like law enforcement, that leaves the door open for bad actors like this to take advantage of that situation. It's just not an environment that we want to breed in this country. I mean, why take on the extra risk just because ICE doesn't want to identify themselves? They want to put face masks over their head. They want to wear plain clothes. I mean, there are certain scenarios where, of course, police aren't going to identify themselves if they're doing undercover work and so on and so forth. Sure, there are situations where you want a police officer in plain clothes, but not the way that ICE is doing that, because this could be the result of their behavior, where you've got bad faith actors taking advantage of the current environment and showing up on people's doorstep dressed as police officers to carry out heinous crimes. So that's the only reason I wanted to bring that video up to you. Let's go ahead and move on to this. You're going to hear a lot of people on the right trying to say that, oh, he was a Democrat. He had very, very close connections to Tim Walz, who is the governor of Minnesota. Let's go ahead and take a look at the real connections, and then we will discuss.
He was appointed to the governor's Workforce Development Council by Governor Dayton in 2016 and then again in 2019 by Governor Tim Walz. Now, the governor's office appoints thousands of people from all parties to these boards and commissions. The Workforce Development Council has about 60 people on it.
So it is true that this guy has some connection to some politics in the state of Minnesota. But to suggest that he has a personal friendship, personal relationship with the governor, Tim Walz, it's absolutely ludicrous. He worked on this workforce development board. He was appointed by the previous governor. And then when Tim Walz came along, it sounds like he re-upped his appointment. Tim Walz doesn't know the guy. I don't even know if he's met the guy. But this was as part of a nonpartisan or bipartisan workforce development board. And it's not uncommon for somebody of the opposite political side to be appointed to a board like this, because it's supposed to be a nonpartisan position that is supposed to be working on workforce development. It's not supposed to be partisan politics. But this is one of the main reasons. It's just such a shame that Donald Trump especially has been politicizing nearly every aspect of our lives, especially when you talk about the judiciary. We didn't used to care whether or not you were appointed by a Republican or you were appointed by a Democrat. But Donald Trump has made that front and center to cast doubt on anybody who wasn't appointed by Donald Trump. And now we are seeing this bleed into all aspects of our lives. So even if somebody like Tim Walz appointed a Republican or a conservative to a workforce development board, oh, it's got to be suspect. There's something fishy going on. Oh, he must have ties to Tim Walz, when it's all just a load of shit. This is just more conspiratorial nonsense that we see coming from the right wing. We got to pull back. This overt politicization of all of these different people and all of these different walks of life. It is a cancer to our society. And we are seeing it play out in real time here. The next video I wanted to show you is of his best friend. This is somebody he's known, I think he said, since the 4th grade. So 40 or 50 years, I think he said, he's known him. And this is what he said when asked, well, was he a Democrat? Was this a guy who was on the left?
Can you talk about his politics a little bit? I know that you had some discussions. I just wanted to talk.
Well, everyone's calling him a Democrat. He's not a Democrat. He would be offended if people called him a Democrat. Because of this board thing he was on for Governor Walz, it wasn't to serve. He was just serving the community.
So he was just serving the community, and he would be offended if you called him a Democrat. This is coming from his lifelong friend, somebody he's known since the 4th grade, and somebody he's known for 40 or 50 years, saying, of course, this guy's not a Democrat. And in fact, he would be offended if you suggested as much. This was a conservative individual who carried out a politically motivated attack against people on the opposite side of the aisle, against Democratic lawmakers. We don't know exactly why yet. We know this was a politically motivated attack. We don't necessarily know if this was about abortion, which is a topic that he cared deeply about. This Vance Boelter guy who carried these heinous crimes out. We don't know if it was about abortion. We don't know if it was about something to do with local politics. But he was a conservative carrying out a politically motivated assassination and assassination attempt against Democratic lawmakers in Minnesota. And if you just need a little extra to get you over the top here he is giving some sort of sermon down in the Congo somewhere, and he kind of goes on an anti-trans rampage or rant here.
Il n'y a aucun péché that God can't take care of. Dieu ne peut pas enlever. Nothing. Il n'y a rien. There's people, especially in America. Il y a des gens, particulièrement aux États-Unis. They don't know what sex they are. They don't know how their sexual orientation. They're confused. Ils ne savent pas ce qu'ils sont exactement, ils ont une confusion.
The enemy has gotten so far into their mind and their soul.
Et l'ennemi est entré dans le fond de leur pensée et de leur âme.
But this word
Mais cette parole
cuts deeper
va aux profondeurs.
because it's living
Parce qu'elle est
and
vivante
it's active.
et elle est agissante.
God goes down there and pulls that out.
Elle peut entrer dans notre cœur et enlever tout ce qui est de mal.
And he sets every person free.
Does that really seem like somebody on the left to you? Does it seem like a Democrat to you? Seem like a socialist? Or does it seem like this was a guy who was a conservative, who was a Republican? Even his roommate said he was a very strong Trump supporter, giving an anti-trans rant down in the Congo, speaking about how we've got all these confused people who don't even know what sex they are. Seems like he was a conservative to me. And unfortunately, we are in a political environment where this is some of the first considerations that we have to make. Because either you don't say anything at all, and the other side, mostly the right, is going to go on the attack and try to spin this into some conspiracy about how this was just a leftist targeting other moderate Democrats because they didn't like the way they voted on immigration, which is a story that we've heard coming from people on the right. It's absolutely shameful that this is the conversations that we're having after Melissa Hortman and her husband died because a right-wing lunatic decided that he wanted to take matters into his own hands and execute people because he had a political disagreement with them. Unfortunately, that is where we are in our current environment. And I place some of the blame on Donald Trump. I place some of the blame on the MAGA movement because they have elevated our political rhetoric so high. They have demonized the left for so long, trying to make everybody out there believe that we are trying to destroy the country, that we're coming for your kids, that we're trying to trans your kids, all this nonsense. And now we have people taking stuff into their own hands and executing Democratic lawmakers in Minnesota. It is a dark, dark day in our country. It is a tragedy that we shouldn't even have to deal with. And to have to turn this into a political conversation right away and to see just how fast the right-wing media ecosystem spun up new stories, new conspiracies, new falsehoods, new disinformation campaigns to try to get out in front of this story because they knew this guy was a right-wing lunatic. It's just absolutely shameful. So my condolences go out to Melissa Hortman's family. My condolences go out to Mark Hoffman, his wife, and their family. I hope they make a speedy recovery. And I think we should all just strive to do better in this political environment. But unfortunately, like I said, with Donald Trump at the helm of the Republican Party, I really don't know how realistic that is right now. So I just wanted to show this to you. I wanted to show you who this guy was, Vance Boelter. He is the suspect in this case. There is very, very strong evidence that he was the one who committed these heinous acts. There's very, very strong evidence that he had a long list of political disagreements, of political targets that he wanted to go after. Luckily, he has been arrested. After, I think it was a 2-day manhunt, he was finally arrested, and he will be brought to justice. He didn't go out there and injure himself or any other people. He was caught. He's in jail. He appeared in court today, and I just wanted to give this kind of as a baseline to tell the story of what happened here, because we are going to do follow-up videos to this story. So I will leave it there for now, guys. If you guys got anything out of this video, please do remember to smash that like button and subscribe. Maybe share with a friend or two. I'd very much appreciate that. We are trying to build something here on the left that adequately pushes back against the right-wing media ecosystem that just launders all of this conspiratorial nonsense day in and day out. So if you do like what I do here, please remember to smash that subscribe button. Of course, that is free. And if you guys want to see how millions upon millions of people turned up to stand up for our democracy right here in the United States of America, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next one.